Hi, this is Ken Gosnell with CEO Experience, and today I'm honored to welcome the author of 1 Million Followers, a book that's been written by Kane, to talk about the importance of developing branding and marketing expertise around our companies and around our personal brand. So Brendan, thank you for being on the call today, and welcome to the CEO Conversation by CEO Experience.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, you know, I'm a big fan of your book, 1 Million Followers. And of course, I know a little bit of the history of how that book came to be, but can you tell us why you wrote that book? And if anybody's not familiar, why they should run out and get a copy?
Well, I've been in the digital technology and social space for about 15 years now, back to the very earliest stages of social media. And I initially started off in the entertainment industry, working with movie studios on their digital strategy, overseeing campaigns for films ranging from $15 to $100 million budgets, which then also afforded me the opportunity to work directly with actors, directors, and producers online. And then from there, I dove into the world of entrepreneurship and started building technology platforms and strategies for big media companies, celebrities, and professional athletes. And just through that experience, I would often get the question that, okay, it's great that you can do this for an MTV, a Taylor Swift, a Katie Couric, but what about people starting from scratch? You know, what is really possible? And that's what seeded the idea in my head for the experiment of generating 1 million followers in 100 countries in 30 days. And I felt it was a great hook to bring people into a larger conversation of what's really possible and how you can take a message and spread it very quickly to your core audience or spread it around the world to have a meaningful impact.
Excellent. And you know, like I said, I'm a big fan of the book. I think you both talk about kind of the ideal, but also the very practical of how to begin a social media following. You speak about the importance of the audience that's out there today and the competition around that. And you say, we only have about 3 seconds to gain somebody's attention. Can you talk about kind of how you separate yourself in the competition world?
Right now, we live in a world where there's 60 billion messages sent out on digital platforms each day. And because of that, we're no longer living in a world where you're just competing against your direct competition. You're now competing against every other piece of content out there. You're competing against a CNN or a Fox News, a Kim Kardashian, a LeBron James, The Rock. You're fighting against all that content for noise. And a lot of what happens is the algorithms control the distribution of your content. So if you're not able to really capture the attention of somebody in those first 3 seconds, they will scroll past your piece of content, and that will then trigger the algorithms that your content is not really retaining or engaging your audience, and thus it gets suppressed. So it's critical in the world that we live in today to be able to capture that attention in the shortest time period possible, to get them to pay attention to what you have to say, to get them to pay attention to your products, your services, or whatever action you're looking for people to take.
I think that's powerful and speaks of the importance of influence, obviously, in that. So you talk about how to craft a great message in order to create that differentiator. Can you talk about the importance of content messaging and maybe even authenticity as it relates to separating yourself from the competition?
Yeah, we work a lot in that capacity. To my second book that's coming out in a month or two is really all about this concept. The second book is called Hook Point: How to Stand Out in a 3-Second World. And we really break down this concept of what's called a hook point, which hooks people into a larger conversation. It allows you to grab that attention in the first 3 seconds that then warrants the ability to win the next 10, 15, 30, and 60 seconds. So really understanding how you're first going to hook somebody into the conversation and then how you build off of that attention once you've gained it. And that's critically important when it comes to competition and winning in your marketplace. Again, you're not just fighting against the other businesses for direct competition, you're fighting against that attention of everybody else. So there's a lot of tools and tactics that we use in order to grab that attention. But to your point is there has to be authenticity to it. There has to be a strong story to it, because we're not talking about clickbait here. because you could grab somebody's attention, but then if it's not authentic, if it doesn't have a strong story to it, then you're going to lose that attention and it's going to fall flat and not really deliver on what you're looking for with your key business KPIs.
Yeah, one of the things that I appreciated when you wrote about in the book was, Taylor Swift's story and the hard work that it took to grow an audience, but the diligence that you led her into be engaging with her audience. And you talk about the importance, authenticity wise, like she reached out to people that was following her. You talked about just that personal interaction. Can you talk in this scenario a little bit about the critical nature of when you start to gain followers or an audience, kind of pulling back the cover so that they can get to know you individually and you can reach out to them almost one by one, like Taylor did when she started building her audience?
Yeah, the biggest takeaway is that once you have attention, what do you do with it? How do you interact with it? How do you capitalize off of it? And that's really what Taylor did so brilliantly early on, as she understood the value of fostering that one-to-one relationship with her fans. She recognized that each time she signed an autograph, she responded to a comment, took a photo with the fan. Not only did that turn that fan into a fan for life, but it also turned that fan into a brand advocate, somebody that was now willing to share her message, her music, her story. And obviously there was an inflection point where she was getting too big to respond to every single one, but you still saw her going to bridal showers, birthdays, weddings of her fans that also went viral in and of itself. And she did that brilliantly because she understood the value of that, but she did it in an authentic way. It wasn't, hey, I'm going to manipulate the system. Now, for other businesses, it's like you don't have to be signing autographs or taking photos with fans because you may not have that, but understanding that high-level principle of how you interact with customers through support, through comments, through the content that you produce, and making sure that they feel heard, making sure that they feel like they're a part of the brand. Because the minute you do that, they don't just become a customer, they become a brand advocate that's willing to share your message for you.
Yeah, I love that. I appreciate the idea of really that brand advocacy and really being an extension for any business or personality, if you will, which is where you've worked at, and helping other people having it be an extension of that. And that's really where you have great success. One of the things that I appreciated about your book too was the real practical nature of it. And you outline in detail, step by step, to know those brand messages that you should create, because you track data in order to find what messages were resonating with the audiences. Can you talk a little bit about how a business, because I see a lot of business owners waste a lot of money and time on doing ineffective messaging. So can you give some insights on how do they track their messaging to know which messages resonate with their audience?
Well, first and foremost, you need to understand what are the key KPIs for your business. And that depends on your business. You can set that. Is what are you looking for right now? Are you looking for clicks? Are you looking for leads? Are you looking for sales? Are you looking for shares, virality, whatever that is? And once you have clearly defined that KPI, and you would think that most businesses do, but a lot of people don't know their numbers. So I have a lot of people that come to me and say, like, well, how much did I spend on social media? How much did I pay a firm? How much did I spend on ads? All those things. And it's like, well, you've got to understand the core metrics that drive your business and set those metrics up. And then you use that as a baseline to measure the effectiveness or lack thereof of different messages. And that's where you can just rapidly iterate until you find a way to hit those key performance benchmarks that you've set for yourself. So we test everything and we measure everything. And once you set that baseline, you set that infrastructure up from a testing perspective, it then allows you to quickly identify how to best present your product, your service, your brand to push your business forward.
Right. And you talked about, I love the fact this metrics and testing piece. So one of the things that you did was you would set some of your social media posts to be released at the exact same time, and then look at it over a 24-hour period to measure how successful this post. So you were looking at the same definition of time to the same kind of an audience to know what was resonating. Can you explain that a little bit more, or how you looked at those metrics?
Yeah, you want to control the variables as much as possible. It doesn't mean you have to go to like an insane level with it, but you want to control the benchmarks, or you want to control the variables in terms of how you release that content, the platform, the audience, all of those things against each other so that you can really identify what messages, what campaigns, what creative is working. Because without that control, you can, like, for example, let's just say you have message about buying a new t-shirt, and you take two different messages and you target two different audiences with it, you're not really getting a baseline of which one's performing better because there's different variables associated with those tests. Versus what we would take is that same campaign selling t-shirts and point it to the exact same audience, and we try and do it at the same time. It's not required, but it does help so that we can measure in real time the performance against each other to determine which direction is actually working or not working, so we can make informed decisions on the next step that we want to take.
And then again, I think that's a really critical step, right? As we begin to look at those marketing messages and understanding our audience, having some form of metrics to understand what's working and what's not working. And I think
Yeah, otherwise you're shooting in the dark.
right.
Otherwise you're just guessing. And most people, for some reason, people think social media is different than other aspects of marketing, other aspects of business, but it's the same. It's like if you don't measure your performance, if you don't learn from what works and what doesn't work, you're never going to get better at it.
Right. Hey, a question that I've been getting, obviously we've been paying a lot of attention to what's happening in the news, and there's always the political stuff that happens. What's your best advice for a CEO or business owner? How engaged should they be in reacting to things that are happening in the world versus staying potentially on their message of what they're trying to communicate?
Well, I'm hesitant to use the word reacting because I think oftentimes reacting can convey the wrong response. To me, it's, do you feel like you have something of value to add? Do you feel like you have something to say that is on brand and that is authentic to your voice? So just to give you an example, is you look at what Nike did, I think it was a year or two ago with Colin Kaepernick, as they did that campaign that was extremely powerful, and a lot of people thought it was very risky, and it paid huge dividends for them. But why? Because it was authentic to Nike's brand, who they were, the type of conversations that they have. Versus you have like Gillette, which all they've always talked about is just razors. Then they entered into a advert about the Me Too movement, and they got huge backlash because they never entered those social conversations before. So to me, I think it's a personal choice for each business and each business owner of how they want to engage in the conversation or how they want to participate. And I don't believe in just reacting to something for the sake of reacting. To me, I'd rather take a step back and see, okay, how does this play into what I really want to say, that I'm really passionate about, and how I want to make a positive impact of what is going on in the world.
And that goes back to that authenticity of understanding who we are and what we're trying to communicate. I love your piece about adding value, right? Can I add value to this conversation? Can I add value to my audience? Can I add value um, to people that might be interested so that they want to see if I have more to say about this? Are those the kinds of questions that a company or a business owner should consider as they think through?
Absolutely. Again, how does it play into the difference that I want to make in the world, and how does it play into the conversations I've had in the past in the consumer marketplace? How do consumers view me? Do they view me as a thought leader in this space? Like all of those things should be really taken into consideration of how you want to insert yourself into difficult conversations.
Another piece that you talk about in the book, which I really just value, especially for a lot of the businesses that I work with or the business owner, is you talk about a worldwide approach, and it's okay to gather followers from around the world. Can you talk a little bit about why you think that that's critical in today's economy and marketplace?
Well, I think it depends on the business. Like my background is in entertainment and big brand awareness. So you talk about the film industry, 60 to 70% of box office is international versus domestic. When you talk at the top Fortune 100 companies, like the Facebooks, Nikes, the Cokes of the world, is they've saturated the domestic markets and they have to expand into international territories. So, depending on the industry and the focus that you have with your business, there's tremendous opportunities of looking at a global audience and a global approach versus domestic. I think, especially in America, people get so caught up in just America, and it's such a small percentage of the overall world's population. And there's tremendous opportunities if you expand globally to have a big impact to conquer, different parts of the world that your competitors aren't even starting to think about.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. Obviously, we want to be where our audience is, but because of the world is so small today in many ways, we just never know what's going to end up happening, even as we grow in other parts of the world, like you're talking about. Um, Another question that I got asked was around the understanding how things go viral, and obviously we don't know. There's no magic wand on how to make something where it's attractive, but what advice or counsel do you give to the businesses that you work with and around trying to get traction along those lines? What I remember is from your book is it's more about trying to get it where it's more shareable than it is potentially more viral, because we don't know what will go viral or not.
Well, virality is definitely engineerable. Like you can engineer virality. It's not guaranteed, but you can have a pretty successful hit rate if you know the variables that create that virality. And shareability is definitely one of them, but also to what I was talking about before is understanding the algorithms, because the algorithms control or suppress reach of content, and understanding what they're there to do, what they look for, to drive that reach. And one of the biggest things that people don't do is really creating a strong reference point for yourself. Like when we work with clients privately, we have them do an exercise where we have them create a gold, silver, and bronze tier of references. So we find content creators that are either direct competition or in a similar niche, or sometimes we'll even go outside of that niche to find those. And then we say, okay, you find the gold tier, the people that do go viral, that generate millions of views, and then you do the bronze tier that maybe they do hundreds of thousands of views, and then or the silver tier is the hundreds of thousands of views, and then the bronze tier is thousands of views. And then you look at the variables of what causes each of those tiers to be successful or lack thereof. And then you break it down. You break down the performance indicators that tell you what makes something goes viral versus it doesn't. And then you apply those to your content and you test and seed it to the market, get the data, get the response, and then you learn from that. It's no different than anything else of, again, testing, learning, and iterating. And for some reason, when it comes to social content, people just keep producing the same stuff, keep putting it out there and expecting it to go viral. And it doesn't work that way.
I think that's very helpful. You're absolutely correct. I think that's very insightful. You talked about algorithms, and a question that I get, and obviously you're an expert in this area, is trying to understand how those algorithms work and how often they're changed. Is there a way to understand the algorithms better?
At a very high level, you've got to understand, most people will automatically equate it to, oh, algorithms are just there to suppress content so you pay for reach. It's not that at all. The algorithms are designed to do one thing and one thing only, and that's to keep you on their platforms longer. So anytime you open up Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, there's probably 1,000 pieces of content it could see to you based upon all the people you follow and the content that you've engaged with in the past. So the algorithm's job is to say, okay, there's 1,000 potential variations of content I can seed. What are the top 5 or 10 that I want to seed to these people first? And the way that they look at it is they seed the content that's going to keep you on the platform longer, because that's how they make money. Now, just imagine if you opened up Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube, and the first 5 pieces of content were garbage. They didn't entertain you. What would you do? You would leave. And if that kept happening over and over again, you would ultimately stop using the app. So with social media today, there's more content than ever being posted. So it really has to get smart and prioritizing it. Now, from a content creator's perspective, the way to think about it is, let's say you have 100,000 followers and you post a piece of content. What's happening is that the algorithm may seed it to 500 of those people, and it'll start measuring certain ratios. It'll start measuring, if it's a video, the view to reach ratio, the view to share ratio. If it's like a photo or an article, it's like, what is the reach to engagement ratio? And based upon that, it has internal benchmarks it will mark yourself against. So if it hits those benchmarks that it's looking for, it'll seed it to another 500 people. And then it'll check it again. And then if it hits the mark again, it'll seed it to another 1,000. And it'll just keep doing that over and over again until the point that you can extend beyond your followers if it's really hitting the benchmarks that you're looking for. On the flip side of that, if it seeds it to 500 people and it doesn't hit the benchmark it's looking for, it'll cut the reach right there, because it's saying, listen, this isn't engaging people. We need to prioritize another piece of content. And if you keep doing that over and over and over again, then your account essentially gets labeled as an account that doesn't produce engaging content. So you'll get limited reach with every piece of content, versus the flip side is, if you keep proving yourself and gaining trust, it'll give you more reach out the gate. So that's at a very high level. And yes, algorithms do shift and change, but the one thing that will never change is they're always going to prioritize content that keeps people on the platform longer, content that keeps people engaged. So people get so caught up in algorithms changing and so many articles and things about that, when really at the end of the day is just focus on your content. Focus on getting content that's engaging, retaining users, and you will ultimately win every single time.
That's excellent advice. I think the whole message of staying with your content and trying to make it where it's more engaging, I think is extremely helpful. A couple other quick questions. I know we're just about out of time. I get a lot of questions around, should people or businesses engage in paid advertising on social media networks? What's your best advice around both free advertising and then some of the paid ads?
Well, to me, any big business, it uses paid advertising. And as long as you know your numbers and you going what you're after, paid advertising can be a huge resource. I mean, we use it all the time for our products and for our products or services. And we look at free advertising. I think a mixture of both. But again, it goes back to knowing your numbers and really benchmarking your success of what benchmarks are going to, or KPIs that are going to drive performance for your business. And with that, if you intelligently use paid, it can drive massive growth for any business.
Excellent. Hey, Tracy Stevens just purchased your book, but she also had a question. Tracy, do you want to ask Brendan the question real quick?
Yeah, I mean, I just bought the book, and the thing that's always confused me about, so I think you were answering it while I was typing the question, was focus on content. But the whole concept of SEO and the algorithms is all confusing. Is it addressed in your book, or is there any resource that you can even just recommend that just gives you some context to it?
Yeah, I mean, the book covers a lot on content. It's less on SEO. We're not really SEO experts. But we cover a lot of in-depth on content. And if you also want to shoot me an email, I can give you access to a free training that breaks down this concept of hook points, which is really the crux of where we see success around driving performance, especially on social platforms, or even just on advertising and cold outreach. So yeah, we do definitely cover content creation and how to structure it properly in the book. And we have some of the top content creators in the world that have generated billions and billions of views, where we break down their strategies and techniques as well.
And you talk in the book too about the different platforms, whether it's LinkedIn or YouTube, Facebook, and there's not a platform that you necessarily recommend. You recommend that it's based on the audience that the business is trying to reach. Is that correct?
Well, I always start with, what is the platform that you use every day? What is the platform that you're passionate about? Because you have to become a student of the game. It's the only way you'll get good at it. Now, there's different variables that you have to consider with each platform from a consumption behavior standpoint and an audience standpoint. Like YouTube, very much a long form consumption behavior. You can get somebody to watch something for 10, 20 minutes or even hours. With Facebook and Instagram, it's very short form content, but there's sometimes higher engagement rates. Like Facebook, you can break through and go much more viral than YouTube or Instagram. Instagram typically has higher engagement rates. So there's different variables that you can consider. But first and foremost is like, what's the one you're passionate about? What's the one that you use every day? Because you have to dive in and become a student of that. And we also work privately with clients on how to identify that if they don't really know, based upon their product, their service, and the resources that they have available to their business.
Hey, Brendan, where can they go, anybody that's watching this video, where can they go to find out more about the 1 Million Followers book, more about the platforms that you offer through your coaching, and then get updates on the new book that you're going to release?
Yeah, so for the book, the current book, it's in all the major retail stores. It's on Amazon. You could also go to book.1millionfollowers.com, and one is spelled out. Or you can go to my website, brendanjkane.com. So it's BRENDAN, J as in Jack, Kane, KANE.com. Or email me directly, bkane@brendanjkane.com.
Excellent. Hey, one other quick question. One of the CEOs asked about hashtags, and how important are hashtags and when should they be used in social media?
I don't think that they're critically important. Definitely use them and test them and play around with them. But at the end of the day, it comes down to content. Like, can a hashtag give you a little bit of bump? Sure, but it's not going to make a crappy piece of content go viral. The algorithms are super smart at this point. They understand when you're abusing hashtags, and they also understand when you have a great piece of content as well. And if you have a great piece of content that's hitting their performance benchmarks, again, you will get reach and it will go viral. So again, I don't put too much emphasis on that. Back maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, it did play a contributing factor, but it's not as big anymore. You're on mute.
Lori, do you want to ask your question about YouTube real quick? I think you're on mute. Yep, there we
Now,
go.
is that better? Oh, sorry. Okay. Hi, Brendan. I
Hi.
just saw a small clipping of you on YouTube, and so I want to know whether or not you use YouTube to talk to us more about how to improve in this area, or do you use YouTube as far as even telling us how much we need to promote ourselves?
Yeah, so we're working on a content strategy for YouTube that we'll be launching in a few weeks. Also, as you saw, there's plenty of interviews and other content with me on YouTube that break down into these topics. But if you go to my website, I have a blog where there's a lot of free content. There's a lot of articles on this, and we release new articles every week, and you can sign up for the newsletter. And through that newsletter, we release a new piece of content every week on different tactics regarding this subject matter. And then it also announced when we launch, kind of our YouTube in those pieces of content. We're in production right now on that.
Excellent. And when is your new book going to be released?
It's probably going to be released in 4 to 5 weeks for people that are on my newsletter, and then it's going to be in stores beginning of August.
Excellent. Hey, Brendan, thank you for being here today. I'm a big fan of the 1 Million Followers book. I highly recommend it. I think it's something every CEO and business owner should read. And so thank you for your work. I'm looking forward to your new book coming out as well. So thank you for joining us today.
Cool. I appreciate it.